People think staying young after 70 is about the body. It is not. They talk about diet, exercise, routines, supplements. All of those matter. They help, they support you. But they are not the reason some people feel alive in their later years while others feel like they have already begun to fade. The difference is not physical, it is internal. After 70, something subtle begins to happen. The world around you slows down, but your inner world can either expand or shrink.
Some people grow quieter, not in a peaceful way, but in a withdrawn way. They stop trying new things. They stop asking questions. They begin repeating the same thoughts, the same routines, the same stories. Nothing feels new anymore. Others, however, remain engaged. They stay curious. They continue to notice small details. They learn, they adapt, they question. Their bodies may age, but something inside them remains active. That is what keeps them young. It is not energy, it is curiosity. Curiosity is the one thing that keeps you young after 70. Not the kind of curiosity that chases trends or distractions. The kind that keeps your mind open. The kind that prevents your world from becoming smaller. When curiosity fades, life becomes predictable. Predictability feels safe at first. It reduces effort. It removes uncertainty. But over time, it creates something else. It creates stagnation. You stop exploring. You stop discovering. You stop engaging with the world beyond what you already know. And when that happens, time feels heavier. Days begin to blend together. Weeks pass without distinction. You remember less, not because your memory is failing, but because nothing new is happening to remember. Curiosity interrupts that pattern. It creates variation. It introduces novelty. It gives your mind something to process, something to engage with. I did not understand this earlier in life. I believed youth was tied to physical ability, strength, speed, endurance. I thought once those declined, youth disappeared with them. I was wrong. I have seen people in their 70s and 80s who were physically limited, but mentally alive. They asked questions. They listened. They tried to understand new ideas even when those ideas challenged them. And I have seen people much younger who had already stopped doing those things. They were not old in years. They were old in mindset. Curiosity is what separates those two states. There is a moment, usually around later years, when people begin to feel like they have seen enough. They believe they understand how life works. They become less interested in new perspectives, less willing to change their thinking. That is when aging accelerates, not physically, mentally. Once you believe you already know everything you need to know, your mind stops expanding. And when your mind stops expanding, your experience of life becomes narrower. Narrow experiences feel repetitive. Repetition feels like time is moving faster. And suddenly, years begin to pass without depth. Curiosity slows that process. It makes time feel fuller. It gives each day a sense of discovery, even in small ways. A new conversation, a different perspective, a question you never considered before. These moments seem insignificant, but they accumulate. They keep your mind engaged. They keep your perception flexible. They keep your sense of life active. One of the biggest mistakes people make after 70 is believing they should become more certain. Certainty feels comfortable. It removes doubt. It simplifies decisions. But it also limits growth. Curiosity requires the opposite. It requires admitting that you do not know everything. It requires staying open to change. It requires being willing to question your own assumptions. That is not easy, especially after decades of experience. Experience creates confidence. Confidence can quietly turn into rigidity. Rigidity closes the mind.
Once the mind closes, life becomes smaller, even if your environment remains the same. The people who stay young after 70 are not those who avoid aging. They are those who remain open. They allow themselves to learn from younger people. They remain interested in ideas outside their comfort zone. They adapt instead of resisting change. Adaptation is a form of youth. Resistance is a form of aging. I remember speaking to someone in their 80s who said something simple that stayed with me. He said, "The day I stop being curious is the day I start disappearing." He was not talking about death. He was talking about presence. You can still be here physically and slowly disappear mentally. Curiosity prevents that. It keeps you involved in your own life. It gives you a reason to pay attention. And attention is what makes life feel real. In the next part, I will explain how curiosity changes the way you experience aging and the small habits that keep it alive even when everything around you becomes familiar. Curiosity does more than keep your mind active. It changes how you experience time. As people grow older, one of the most common complaints is that life feels faster. Days pass quickly. Weeks disappear without leaving a clear memory. Time feels compressed. This is not only because of age, it is because of repetition. When your days follow the same pattern, your brain stops paying attention to details. It recognizes the routine and begins to move through it automatically. When fewer details are noticed, fewer memories are formed. And when fewer memories are formed, time feels shorter. Curiosity breaks that pattern. When you approach even familiar things with interest, your attention increases. You notice differences. You engage more deeply. You create more mental markers. Those markers expand your sense of time. A single day can feel longer when it contains something new. This is why people who remain curious often feel like their lives are still unfolding, even in later years. They are not simply passing through time, they are interacting with it. There is also an emotional effect. Curiosity reduces fear. Fear often grows with age because uncertainty feels more threatening. Change feels more difficult. The unknown feels less inviting. But curiosity reframes the unknown. Instead of seeing it as something to avoid, you begin to see it as something to explore. This shift is powerful. It does not remove risk, but it changes your relationship with it. When you are curious, you ask questions instead of assuming outcomes. You observe instead of reacting. You remain open instead of closing yourself off. That openness creates flexibility. Flexibility is another form of youth. Rigid thinking creates tension. It makes every change feel like a disruption. It turns small differences into sources of frustration. Flexible thinking allows adjustment. It allows you to move with change instead of resisting it. After 70, change is constant. Technology evolves, social habits shift. The world does not remain familiar. If you resist all of it, your environment begins to feel foreign. If you stay curious, your environment remains accessible. You may not adopt every change, but you understand it. Understanding reduces isolation.
Isolation is one of the strongest factors that makes people feel old. Not physical isolation alone, but mental isolation. The feeling that the world has moved on and you no longer belong to it. Curiosity prevents that. It keeps you connected to what is happening around you. It allows you to engage with younger generations instead of feeling separate from them. It allows you to learn instead of withdraw. Another important effect of curiosity is that it preserves identity. Many people define themselves by roles, career, family, responsibilities. Over time, those roles change or disappear.
Retirement ends one role. Children grow independent. Social structures shift. If your identity is tied only to those roles, you can begin to feel uncertain about who you are. Curiosity creates a different foundation. It allows you to build identity around exploration, learning, and awareness. Instead of asking, "What do I do?" you begin to ask, "What am I interested in?" That question has no age limit. You can develop new interests at any stage of life. You can learn new skills. You can explore ideas that were never part of your earlier years. These are not large changes. They are small shifts in attention. Reading something unfamiliar. Having a conversation with someone outside your usual circle. Trying something without needing to be good at it. These actions keep your mind engaged. They remind you that life is still open. Another misunderstanding about aging is that it requires slowing down in every way. Physical slowing may be natural. Mental slowing is not required. Curiosity keeps your thinking active. It challenges your assumptions. It invites you to reconsider what you believe. It prevents your perspective from becoming fixed. A fixed perspective feels stable, but it limits growth. Growth is what keeps life interesting. Even after 70, there is still room to grow, not in the same way as earlier years, but in a deeper way. You begin to understand patterns. You connect ideas. You see meaning in things that once felt ordinary. Curiosity allows that depth to develop. Without it, life becomes repetitive. With it, life becomes layered. The most important part of this is that curiosity is a choice. It is not something you either have or do not have. It is something you practice. You can choose to ask one more question instead of assuming you already know the answer. You can choose to listen instead of preparing a response. You can choose to explore instead of dismissing something as unimportant. These choices seem small, but they shape how you experience your life. If you continue making those choices, your mind remains active. Your perspective remains open. Your life remains engaged. That is what keeps you young. Not the absence of age, the presence of interest. After 70, you may not control how your body changes, but you can still control how you respond to the world. You can remain curious. And as long as you remain curious, something inside you stays alive.